This is the second week in a row that we have a story concerning ancient literature. We have two poems to talk about, and then we have three more questions from Misa. And guys, if you have questions or thoughts that you want me to express, leave a question or a comment in the comment section below, and I will get to your questions next week on Friday Reads. Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Andrew Ford, and we're here for a Friday Reads video. We will start things with the story concerning ancient literature. And no, this is not new. This is about a year old. But when you're I mentioned the text, the Herculaneum texts last week. And when you're talking about something that is a 2,100-year-old text, being 1 year old is essentially breaking news. In an article titled "Researchers Reveal First Full Passages Decoded from Famously Inscrutable Herculaneum Scrolls" by Taylor Niccioli at CNN, and this is an image of the text in question. That's what we're talking about right there. They are reading that using these laser penetrating sort of whatevers right there. After using artificial intelligence to uncover the first word to be read in an unopened Herculaneum scroll, a team of researchers has revealed several nearly complete passages from the ancient text, giving insight into philosophy from almost 2,000 years ago. Oh, I guess I was a little bit off there. The Herculaneum scrolls are hundreds of papyri that survived the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79. In their charred state, the ancient documents would crumble if anyone attempted to unroll them, with any writing on surviving pieces would be nearly illegible to the human eye. This is incredible that technology like this exists now, and it is going to make the study of ancient texts go through the roof. We will have many more stories in the next few years that were told thousands of years ago and we have since lost. It makes you wonder if there are some scrolls somewhere that survived something comparable to Mount Vesuvius. You have libraries, the Library of Alexandria, which burnt down. I spend a lot of time thinking about the Library of Alexandria, and this type of technology could make those stories real again. The Herculaneum scrolls are hundreds of papyri that survived the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79. In their charred state, the ancient documents would crumble if anyone attempted to unroll them, and any writing on surviving pieces would be nearly illegible to the human eye. By using computer technology and advanced artificial intelligence, researchers can now analyze the Herculaneum scrolls without unrolling or risking damage to the extremely fragile documents. More than 2,000 characters, the first full passage, have been deciphered from a scroll, according to an announcement Monday by computer scientists who have launched the Vesuvius Challenge, a competition designed to accelerate the discoveries made on the scrolls. It's incredibly gratifying to know that these things are available and we have now a mechanism to read them, and that reading them is going to create an entire field of study and scholarship for classicists, said Brent Seals, a computer science professor at the University of Kentucky and a co-creator of the Vesuvius Challenge. The first word to be read from an unopened scroll was found separately by both Luke Ferrator and Yusuf Nader, a computer science student at the University of Nebraska and the biorobotics graduate student at Freie University Berlin, respectively, in October. This year, joined by Julian Schillinger, the robotics student at ETH Zurich, the three have won the contest's $700,000 grand prize for being the first team to decipher more than 85% of characters from four continuous passages within the same scroll. This is an image. A total of 15 passages were deciphered from the unrolled scroll. The first word to be decoded from the Greek word for purple was detected in October 2023 and can be found within newly interpreted passages. What's more, the team went above and beyond the contest requirements and read 15 partial columns of text, amounting to about 5% of the scroll. The trio uncovered the text by applying a technique known as virtual unwrapping to the rolled up scroll, one of several owned by the Institut de France, which was released on the contest website. The process involved using computer tomography and X ray procedure to scan the coiled up warped papyrus, um, allowing the researchers to virtually flatten the scrolls and detect the ink on the page with advanced AI. After Ferrator, Nader, and Schillinger found the Greek letters, expert papyrologists from England, France, and Italy were brought in to assess the text. If you look at the level of vocabulary from the passages, there is a really nuanced intellectual conversation going on here. It just makes me excited to want to deliver to the scholars an absolutely pristine, complete copy of what this is, so that they can do their work and then we can fully understand it, said Seals, who originally created the unwrapping method and has been developing the technology for nearly 20 years. Words from an ancient philosopher. Over 1,000 carbonized scrolls were recovered from the eruption of Vesuvius, a volcano near Naples, Italy, that covered the ancient Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum in volcanic mud. The charred documents, now referred to as the Herculaneum scrolls, were recovered from a building believed to be the house of Julius Caesar's father in law, according to the University of Kentucky. This is another really sort of interesting nuance of this new technology is finding the scrolls and knowing where to look for them. There have been over the past few years, if you kind of keep up with archaeology a little bit, a host of wild, off the wall sort of discoveries of random things around Italy itself. People have been living on top of Roman ruins for 2,000 years, and these places are just being found with beautiful mosaic floors and all sorts of stuff. But scrolls like these wouldn't have been everywhere. It wasn't like today where you walk in someone's house and they have a grip of books. They have a bookshelf. They have books on bookshelves and laying on the floor, like maybe I do allegedly. Perhaps no one will ever know. So not only are these types of documents very rare, not only is the preservation of these documents very difficult, but even knowing where to look, because you unearth some place that has paper in it, and all of a sudden you have changed the environment, all of a sudden moisture gets in there, and documents like these can start to dissolve, can start to wear away. The decaying process that they go through will be accelerated. So it's just interesting all around. Recently decoded passages were pulled from the end of a scroll and reveal the words written to be the philosopher Philodemus, who was by the philosopher reveal words written by the philosopher Philodemus, who was believed to be the philosopher in residence working at the library in which the scrolls were found, the announcement said. In the deciphered text, Philodemus writes on. So here's another thing that's interesting. There was no internet back then. There was very little, there was no postage as we know it, but there was very little Congress like postage. So some of these texts, should they completely sort of decode these Herculaneum texts, it is possible that these words will be wider spread in our time than they were then. Interesting, to me anyway. In the deciphered text, Philodemus writes on pleasure and whether the abundance of goods available can affect the amount of pleasure they give. As too, in the case of food, we do not right away believe that things that are scarce to be absolutely more pleasant than those which are abundant. The first sentence reads, Philodemus was dismissed over the years because we couldn't really read his passages extensively. Only with difficulty when we get these little snippets. In these passages, he's persuading the people who are listening to him to sort of relax, find good friendships, spend your time living in the moment and enjoying pleasures. So, half stoic, half indulgent. Said Roger McFarlane, a professor of classical studies at Brigham Young University, who has studied the Herculaneum scrolls. McFarlane was not involved with the discovery, but participated in certifying the first word that came out in October. Seals said he hopes that almost an entire scroll will be deciphered this year, and the new grand prize contest puts forth an even more ambitious goal, offering a cash prize of $100,000 for the first team that can decipher at least 90% of all four scrolls released on the contest's website. The winners of the Vesuvius Challenge are able to get a text that's authentic but doesn't result in the destruction of the scroll. And that's probably the most miraculous thing about it, McFarlane said. It is my opinion that breakthroughs like this, what we are perhaps too concerned in society today with expansion, expanding the horizons of literature as we know it, expanding the horizons of philosophy as we know them, expanding the horizons of I don't know what else you would find, religious texts as we know them. Getting more in touch with the thoughts and philosophies and stories that have been will allow us a deeper introspection into the stories that currently are. The fact that in ancient Rome, this guy was writing about, Philodemus was writing about whether or not having too many different varieties of food was basically good for the human experience, good for the human soul, good for the sort of hardiness of your character. The fact that that was all going on back then, when if we went back then, we wouldn't think there was very much variety at all. Where's all of the ice cream, huh? This is something that allows us to reflect on the day to day as we have them by looking into the past. And again, going back to that point that these words might be more famous today than they were in his day is absolutely mind boggling. Now, there are two poems from the past week's reading. I don't think either of which have appeared on the channel yet. The videos for them are shot, but they have not been premiered. One of them is The Embankment by T.E. Hulme. It reads as such: The fantasia of fallen gentlemen on a cold, bitter night. Once in finesse of fiddles found I ecstasy, in the flash of gold heels on hard pavement. Now see I the warmth's the very stuff of poesy. O God, make small the old star-eaten blanket of the sky, that I may fold it around me and in comfort lie. This is the story of a fallen man who has found himself homeless and is looking up at the starry sky, questioning why he found those nights of merriment in the finesse of fiddles, going out to parties and whatnot, listening to music, why he found merriment and comfort there. When tonight all he wants is that star-eaten blanket of the sky to wrap around himself. Warmth is what he wants, not merriment, not parties, not women in gold heels on hard pavement. Is begging for warmth. I had never read T.E. Holm before. I had never read this poem before. This is a rough one. They're both rough ones for today. Maybe I shouldn't have picked these two poems in coordination. But this is a rough one, and it's one that I think is humbling, right? You're talking about someone who had been perhaps in the main thrust of life, a fallen gentleman, not a fallen man, a fallen gentleman, on a particularly cold and bitter night, begging for warmth, looking up at the sky and begging for warmth, finding himself homeless in life. I had one of the books I will talk about later in this video. I had an English class in college, and we were talking about As I Lay Dying. And the family in As I Lay Dying, it's a wild one, right? The Bundren family is, in some ways, it's the common American family. In some ways, it's the common family unit probably around the world. It's dysfunctional. In other ways, they're not just dysfunctional, they've lost function. So they are struggling. And in this class, I think I was the only person putting himself through college. You know, I always wanted to go to college. It took me a while to get myself into a position in life where I could afford to go to college. And then I was there with a bunch of spoiled kids. And it was a directional Missouri school. There was no one there that had particular wealth, but a lot of them were being sent to college. You could tell, right? Which, nothing against them. It's just you can tell when someone isn't possibly taking things as seriously as they should in class, that they aren't paying for it. And I made the observation during this class, we're all one real bad day away from being a Bundren. My professor said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, at the time, I didn't have insurance. And my truck was on liability. So imagine I'm driving home from school that day, and I get T-boned by someone that does not have a car insurance, and they just take off and no one ever finds them. I've got a broken leg. I can't work. I get fired. I can't pay for school. I don't get a degree. I get fired. I don't have a degree. I don't have a car because all I had was liability. I'm screwed. One 3-second window in one day could ruin a 20-something-year-old's life." And she laughed and laughed and laughed, and it was like I meant it to be funny, right? But that idea that none of us are ever very far away from laying under the old star-eaten blanket of the sky and praying that it provides warmth. Pardon me. The second poem is from Alfred Lord Tennyson. It is titled "Break, Break, Break," and it reads as such. "Break, break, break on thy cold grey stones, O sea, and I would that my tongue could utter the thoughts that arise in me. Oh, well for that fisherman's boy that he shouts with his sister at play. Oh, well for that sailor lad that he sings in his boat on the bay. And the stately ships go on, to their haven under the hill. But oh, for the touch of a vanished hand and the sound of a voice that is still. Break, break, break at the foot of thy crags, O sea, but the tender grace of a day that is dead and will never come back to me. So, the vanished hand, that's a loved one that our speaker no longer has. Our speaker no longer feels that he can speak. And I would that my tongue could utter the thoughts that arise in me. He is envious of the fisherman's boy shouting with his sister. He is envious of the sailor lad that is singing in his boat because he does not feel that he can sing anymore. But it's not just that. It's not just that he feels paralyzed by his loss. It is that hand had a voice as well. The owner of that hand is a sound that is still as well. So what are we doing here with this title? Break, break, break. Our speaker is watching the violence of the waves crash into the crags. Break, break, break on thy cold gray stones, O sea. He's seeing that violent motion. The waves battering themselves against those crags, and he's hearing it. Break, break, break. Those crags provide sound there, and they change the motion of the waves. They change the direction of the sea. If he could make that noise, if that vanished hand, the owner of that vanished hand were alive and could make that noise, perhaps things would turn around. But our speaker does not only not have his own voice or her own voice, does not only miss his loved one's voice. Break, break, break at the foot of thy crags, O sea, but tender grace of a day that is dead will never come back to me. Our speaker is hopeless. Our speaker does not have the hope that these moments will return to him, that his voice will return to him. That is a truly sad poem. Now, for some questions from last time. Misa is back with 3 more questions. Misa says, which are your favorite or favorites books and why? And your favorite genres. Have these changed over time? Yeah. So, the first book that I really had as a favorite book is one that I really picked as my favorite. It was Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. And Fight Club is a book that is probably, the demographic for this book is probably angry young men. And that's when I found it. And because of that, so it's got a staccato writing style, very short declarative sentences, very short declarative paragraphs. And Palahniuk is going through a story of destruction and discovery in this book. And that was my favorite book at the time, because I think when you find a favorite book, it either speaks for you or it speaks to something inside of you. And Fight Club, when I found it, spoke for me in the way that it was an angry text. The second one is As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. Like I said, I read it in that college class, didn't understand it. Read it again in grad school, then I understood it. Then I got its brilliance and have read it a couple times since, and every time I read it, I notice different things about it. And there is a video on the channel called "As I Lay Dying, the Darkest Detail," and it's about some supernatural goings on in that book that I've never heard anyone else talk about. So that might be from Adrian's noggin. That might be an original observation here. The last one, the most recent one, is San Miguel by T.C. Boyle. It is a very this is a book, San Miguel. If Fight Club speaks for me, San Miguel speaks to me. It is a book of quiet desperation. It is a book that tells the story of a place almost. It's a book that almost really tells the story as a place. And if you have not read it, it's not a very popular book from what I can gather. Definitely worth the investment there. Spend a couple bucks, get it sent to you, and read it, because you're not going to find it in a bookstore. The next question here from Misa: why don't you like including content on your I can't read. Why don't you like including content that's not formally about literature in your channel, like you mentioned about Friday Reads? So, admittedly, this is self-destructive for the channel because of the fact that the algorithms look at how many of your subscribers click on a video before promoting it. So if your own subscribers aren't watching a video, why would anyone else? And why would anyone watch a video about a poem or a short story or a novel they haven't read? So it's self-destructive for my channel to do it this way. But really, it's about the sanctity of the mission. I've thought about bringing the movie reviews from my personal channel over here. I've thought about bringing the philosophy texts from my personal channel, the nonfiction from my personal channel over here. But it's about sanctity of mission. If I give that up, it feels like I am declaring defeat for literature, and I don't want to do that. And the final question here from Misa, and again, if you have questions, leave them for me so I have something to talk about in future videos. Do you still write your own fiction or nonfiction? Have you published something while I've been living under a rock? I do still write. I have not published in a very long time. I am going to adopt a pseudonym before I ever submit anything again, because it is about the sanctity of the mission as well. I am largely anti-identity. I don't think that identity should play as big a role as it does, and I think that adopting a pseudonym allows you to divorce your identity in any way, for better or worse. I think that work should be able to stand on its own, and pseudonyms further help that happen. And I think that people, even down to your name, right? Someone doesn't have to know who you are. Someone can read your name and come up with ideas based on that. And it will shade their ideas of the text. And I think that pseudonyms are going to be a way of the future in writing, I think. Anyway, guys, that is today's Friday Reads. If you like or appreciate this sort of thing, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.